Welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week. It chooses the horror movie and they discuss it. Today we're talking about 1994's New Nightmare, which was directed by Wes Craven. I'm your co-host, Alec.
I'm Eric, and with us again is Joe Testa. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, fellas. Excited to be on Elm Street. I can't believe this is the first Freddy discussion I've been here for.
Ooh, yeah, because this is our third Nightmare on Elm Street film. We did the first one in our first October, and then we did Dream Warriors in our second October wheel. So yeah, this is the third one we're doing.
And that's a nice little trilogy. I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Well, Joe, again, welcome back. It was good to have you on for Friday the 13th last Friday, so that was good. Mm-hmm. Eric, you were saying you hadn't seen this movie in a long time, which is funny because I thought you were the guy that showed me this movie.
Probably. I think the last time I watched it in its entirety is, say, 2003 or 4. No, maybe 2002?
Jesus.
Sixth grade, I'd say. So 2002.
Oh, my God. It's been a long time. And, Joe, I'm going to guess that you saw this in theaters with your friends because you were... Wait, were you of age? No, you were like 12.
Yeah, no, I was still pretty young, but I did indeed see this in theaters, and I saw it with my grandfather, dragged my poor grandfather to this one. And this is one I had been looking forward to. I was kind of following this production since it started. I probably started buying Fangorias a year before this came out, so I was very much looking forward to this. I mean, I had been a big Freddy fan for a couple of years now. Well, more than a couple of years. I was ready for Halloween, I think when I was in first grade. So,
first grade, geez.
Yeah. And I saw Freddy's Dead in theaters.
What? You must have it was 91. So
so I was 9 when and had a really good time with that one because the climax of Freddy's Dead was in 3D.
Oh yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And in all honesty, we could talk about like the tone of the Freddy movies and how this one is a bit different, but I would argue Freddy's Dead is pretty appropriate for 10-year-olds. I mean, maybe my scale is way off on that, but Freddy's Dead was a good time. It was a fun time. And I don't think I ever really felt Freddy was dead because we were all still waiting for, Freddy versus Jason. And in 93, we got, Jason Goes to Hell and had that tease at the end,
Yeah, where the glove comes out of the ground. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then, soon after that, I heard rumblings that Wes Craven was coming back, and I was super excited, obviously.
Now, what do you think is the reason? Because this is the 10-year anniversary of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously written and directed by Wes Craven. He gave his input and a little bit of story for Dream Warriors Part 3, but then he didn't touch the series until now. Why do you think that was?
Well, we actually got into it a little bit in our Scream podcast. There had been bad blood between Wes Craven and Robert Shea from New Line Cinema because Freddy became this like merchandising juggernaut, and Wes felt that he was kind of owed a bit for that. He deserved a piece of that. So I think, they had a falling out, but at some point in the early 90s, I guess, or right after Freddy's Dead, Robert Shea did reach out to Wes and they made amends. And I think there was financial compensation. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of that was, but we want you to do another movie,
Right.
So that might have been part of it.
It would have been funny if there was a scene in The Office with Robert Shea and Nancy where it's just like, we kind of screwed over Wes a couple times. So now we're looking to make another. Like he wrote that into it. That would have been pretty funny. Well, Eric, now that you've seen it again, it's been a while. I mean, how does this hold up to the other Nightmare movies for you?
It's different. I mean, all the movies are different in their own way, but this one's just so out there and crazy. Like the way it brings Freddy into the real world and like Freddy's kind of like 2.0. I think this is one of the top 4 Freddy movies, I'd say. I put it in like the 4th spot. I like it because it's so different.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I've seen it so many times, Eric. I really thought you'd seen it a bunch too.
I haven't. I remember a lot of it, and one of the scenes I remember the most is, the kid like hanging over the freeway, and the kid from Kindergarten Cop and Full House.
Yeah.
And I was expecting him at one point. I remember him doing the voice, like, yeah, Freddy's coming. It's like, girls have a penis and boys have a vagina from Kindergarten Cop. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that in this.
Well, he was in Pet Sematary too. He's the little boy that's like, not fair, not fair.
Right, right. He's very young in that one. Very good child actor. Very cute kid. Very good at horror.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, like of all the Friday the 13th movies, you had mentioned it, Joe, and it's pretty well known that, yeah, they get very goofy, very off the rails. Freddy turns into just like a comic book character, basically. But then in this one, it's true. Wes Craven's like, I wanted this to be like what I always intended him to be, and he is dark and evil, and it's just like gross. There's really not a lot of comedy in this one at all.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Eric was saying, I mean, there's really nothing like this movie, which is really saying something. I mean, it's just so unique. And I think for audiences at the time, a lot of people didn't know what to make of this movie. You know, if you were buying a ticket for a new Freddy movie, I don't think this is quite what you were bargaining for. Like, this is actually as far as box office ticket sales go, this is the lowest grossing Freddy movie.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of the, more critically acclaimed, but it wasn't a big hit at the time. I think it's developed more of a cult audience as years have gone by, but this movie is just so unique, and I just give it so much credit for that. I just love how wild it is. And actually, some of Wes Craven's ideas that didn't make it into this movie are even more wild and insane, and we could get into that, I guess.
Yeah. What didn't make the cut?
Well, something I heard was one of Wes's ideas for himself was that he was being driven around in a van by Hills Have Eyes star Michael Berryman, and Wes is like writing the new Nightmare script in the back of the van with his eyelids cut off, like out of his mind, trying to keep Freddy in this prison. It's like really crazy stuff. And I kind of wish Wes did, follow up on some of these ideas, because they seemed pretty wild, but I totally get it. Something that's interesting about this movie is I'm sure he was conscious of how he portrayed himself. And I'm sure Heather Langenkamp was kind of hesitant about how she was going to be portrayed. They're playing themselves, they're using their real names, and, I give Heather a lot of credit, because so much of this movie has things that are taken from her real life. Like, she really did have a stalker, and she had a son, she had a husband that was in the special effects industry. So, I'm sure Wes didn't want people to think he was this psycho, so he wrote himself instead as being this kind of just a guy up in the Hollywood Hills in a mansion,
Right. Yeah. No, I did read that she had a stalker at the time, and Wes Craven asked, like, hey, can I like put this in the script? And I thought that was pretty interesting. One other thing about this movie too, you probably know this, Joe. There was an earthquake scene written into the script originally, and then the Northridge earthquake happened while they were filming it. So they went off and got footage, obviously, of like the destruction, and they put it in the news cast or whatever for the film. But like, what are the chances of that? Did you know about that?
I did, yeah. So all that footage, there's a scene where I think it's the scene where Heather Langenkamp is on her way to meet Wes Craven, and all that destruction you see is all real. So they got some free, extra production.
Oh my God, it's so crazy. Eric, did you know that earthquake was like, it's almost like Freddy's back from the earthquake, but it's also like the earthquake's real,
No, I didn't know that, but I do know that you were recording a podcast with, I think, Nick Leone when the Exorcist podcast, and there was an earthquake. Remember that?
Yeah, during our podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like you're in California right now, so I'm like, oh boy, he's just like jinxing it right now. He's probably gonna have an earthquake.
I hope not. Yeah, both, because Nick is like an hour south of me, and he was just like, dude, you feel that? I was like, I do feel that right now. But yeah, I just thought that was like scary. And considering this film is so meta, having it even be more meta in the real world, I'm like, this is freaking weird. It's a weird coincidence.
I like it. I like that. I like the ideas behind the earthquake becoming part of the nightmare, where she goes to the hospital and she's like, I scratched my arm during the earthquake, and they're like, there's no earthquake. And I think that's just a cool idea. I like the idea of the script becoming part of the movie, and it's like Wes has like a writer's block and he can't finish it. And I like that. And like at the end she's reading it, and if you like pause the thing, you see like the pages are like the actual script of this movie we just watched, which is kind of cool. And my favorite part, And I really like this because I was kind of like, what is that? When she goes into the coffin, remember?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that scene where it's like they got the felt from inside a coffin to make that scene. Because it's like, you know, that like kind of like what's like ruffly
Yeah.
kind of like yellow stuff. I thought that was so well done.
Oh yeah.
Like that's so cool. Great ideas in this movie. It's just crazy. It's banana land. This movie's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah. I had a question for you, Joe. I think I may have found two sort of plot holes, and
Okay.
I'm kind of curious to see if you can plug them up for me. Wes, when he meets with Heather, he says, hey, you need to come back and play Nancy one more time. You're the person that defeated Freddy the first time. You've embarrassed him or whatever. We need you to come back and finish the job, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I remember correctly, Nancy died in Dream Warriors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how is she going to come back and defeat Freddy if she's dead?
Yeah, I mean,
Joe, can you plug this one? Can you plug it?
well, Wes is referring to the first movie, that she was the first person to humiliate him and defeat him in that first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you referring to how would she come back in this new movie that Wes is writing?
Yes. So in this movie, Wes is writing another film. I'm assuming a sequel to Freddy's Dead. By that point in that timeline, Nancy should be dead.
Yes, but I don't think he's writing a sequel to Freddy's Dead. He's writing the movie we're watching.
Okay.
Because when Heather sees the script at the end, and there are definitely kind of things that even I, after watching this movie a couple dozen times, I'm a little foggy about. I think especially towards the end, it just sort of operates on kind of dream logic.
Yeah.
But when Heather looks at the script at the end, it begins exactly as the movie begins. So what I take from that is that Wes is writing the movie we're watching, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does. It's a little weird, but it makes sense. The other plot hole that I found at the end, which you can probably just write off to dream logic here, but
It's time to feel the rage. Join us on Film Rage, where we talk movies, current releases, coming attractions, streaming, and classic films as well. Directors and actors beware, as you cannot hide from the rage. My name is Bryce, and I'm part of the Film Rage crew, which also includes Jim.
Hey.
And Murray.
Yo.
Why is it you always talk all the time? I can't
'Cause I
understand
got
why
this
your
sweet,
voice
sweet
is so...
voice.
This is the Merman, the voice of reason. These two can't agree on anything most of the time. Some movies are Mondo, some are just... Every week, something is going to make us rage. Join us every Wednesday and
Feel the rage.
you know when John Saxon's character starts thinking he's Nancy's father again,
Yes.
Donald or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And they show his cop badge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says Los Angeles Police Department, but shouldn't it say Springwood Police Department?
Yes.
It's dream logic.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I don't know if I have an explanation for that. To me, what's happening there is as Freddy is clawing his way into our world becomes more like the movie world. And yeah, I don't have an explanation as to why he's NYPD and not Springwood PD.
Yeah.
But you mentioned meta earlier, and I think in our Scream podcast, we talked a little bit about how this was kind of his warming up for Scream, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it just made me think that, like, I feel like this is a really personal movie for Wes Craven. I think he's just kind of addressing a lot of issues that he would continue to address in Scream, like, what it is to be associated with this series and with horror movies in general, and what it's like to be, an actor in Heather's case, what it's like to be her in a pre-Scream world. What it was like to be associated with horror movies wasn't always a positive thing, I'd imagine, especially for Wes Craven, who, made one of the most controversial movies of all time with Last House on the Left. So I think he's just kind of working some of those issues out. There's this doctor character who Heather interacts with later in the movie, who actually was based on a person that Wes locked horns with at the MPAA, the censors, essentially. And, you can tell there's like this doctor treats Heather with a lot of judgment. You know, not only did you let your son watch these movies, you're associated with these movies and they might be the cause of these mental issues that he's having now. So it's really interesting to see Wes, 10 years after Nightmare on Elm Street, kind of dealing with being the horror master. And I still feel that, in a pre-Scream world, like horror movies, as far as respectability, was like one step above porn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Well, I wonder, it makes me think, because like Wes Craven has children. I wonder if people, if his kids may have had issues, and maybe people were like, whoa, look at what you do for a job. So look at your kids. Yeah. I actually thought that character was, honestly, with the exception of Freddy, the scariest part of the entire movie, when she's like, let's cut this evil out of him or whatever. And I was just like, whoa, this lady's face is terrifying. She, I think amazing actress for especially really knowing what she was doing. Very self-aware, but yeah, it is. There's a lot more going on here than just horror. It's really a lot about what does horror do to people and society too.
Yeah, and I always found this movie really interesting too, especially when I first saw it, because it was kind of a peek behind the curtain, as someone who not only loved horror movies, was just fascinated with the making of horror movies. And this is before DVD special features and all that, where you would see a little more of a glimpse behind the curtain. So all of this, when the movie opens, we get to see behind the scenes of the new Freddy movie. This stuff was just fascinating for me.
Yeah, like the boiler room and the flames and the obviously the robotic hand and the blood. That was really cool too. I like that a lot.
Well, Eric, you love Robert Englund, so it must have been cool to be able to see him just hanging out,
painting and wearing cool glasses and going to funerals. Yeah, that was cool.
Going to funerals. Speaking of the funeral scene, there was also, was it Rod from the original one? He was in it.
Yeah, there's a couple of cameos there. Tuesday Night, who replaced, that's her name, by the way.
Yes.
She replaced Patricia Arquette as Kirsten in Nightmare 4. She's there. And funny story, Craven wanted to get Johnny Depp for that scene. And he admitted that he was just kind of too shy to ask him. And eventually he ran into Johnny Depp not long after this and told him about how he wanted him to be in the movie, but he was too shy to ask him. And Johnny Depp said he definitely would have did it. He should have just asked.
Dude, I read that too, and I was just like, that's so weird that Wes Craven would have been intimidated to ask Johnny Depp to be in a movie. He's basically the reason Johnny Depp was thrown into stardom. I mean, without Wes Craven, who knows if Johnny Depp would even be, defending himself in the court right now? Who knows? He did make a cameo in Freddy's Dead, though.
Right, yeah. I wonder if Wes knew that. I mean, if he's gonna be in Freddy's Dead, I would imagine he would do this one.
Yeah, right. Whoever that director was just like, get Johnny Depp. And then Wes is like, I don't know. The scenes, that you mentioned, Eric, where he's running on the highway and everything like that, I gotta say, I was kind of a little disappointed with that scene because it's so clearly like a screen that they're just running in front of. I don't know. There's a couple scenes in this that I was kind of like, Wes, I kind of expect a little more out of you. I don't know why, but that was one of them, the highway scene. Obviously a lot of tension, but it didn't look great.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they fooled around with a little too much early CGI in this movie too, in a few moments here or there. I think maybe things got a little too ambitious. But I will say, if I'm going to nitpick a little bit, I wish this movie did push a little further into the surreal, into more nightmare imagery, because for most of it, it becomes like a creepy kid movie, like a possession movie. And I think those scenes are well done. And I even feel like it's reflected in the music. It's I really like the score for this movie. The original Nightmare score by Charles Bernstein is probably one of my all-time favorite scores. I think this one's good. It's very Omen. And yeah, maybe that's what Wes was going for. Maybe he thought, the kind of the boiler room and all the stuff from the old movies was just kind of overdone, and he was going for something a little more grounded, a little more like movies he liked, like Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist. It seemed like he was pushing more in that direction, but I would have loved to have seen just a little more variety in the nightmare sequences.
Yeah, that was actually the biggest thing to me that stood out was the music. I didn't not like it, but it did not feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street film. It was so orchestral, and didn't have that like just the intense like even when he's attacking in the beginning of the original one where he's chasing after Tina and it's just like ding 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 ding. It's so good. And I don't know, and this music was like better but didn't fit the horror to me.
I thought the music was good, and I always loved the sound effects in this movie, like with the nail, the classic like 1 second of the claw hitting the like metal. You know that exact noise.
Yep.
And it's so like I could pick that out if someone just played that. It's like, oh, that's from Freddy Krueger.
100%. You also mentioned, Joe, like I guess like making the kills a little bit better. The scene where they almost reenact the Tina death scene where it's like he's getting dragged on the roof and everything. But this time we actually get to see Freddy doing it, which is like, that's crazy. I mean, do you know if they use the same kind of room contraption that they used for the original one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was done the same way. Speaking of Freddy, what do you think of his new look?
Today's episode of Wheel of Horror is brought to you by Bard's Clothing. Remember that one time you bought a Cool Cat shirt, and now you get bombarded with calls and ads for Cool Cat shirts? At Bard's Clothing, the focus is on you and your story. A custom clothing company producing casual knits, button-down shirts, suits, and much more. All of Bard's clothing garments are created right here in America, so you don't have to worry about slave labor or killing the environment. Buying with intention to tell your story has never been easier. Go to bardsclothing.com to book an appointment, and be sure to follow them at Bard's Clothing on Instagram. I like the face. I miss the hat.
Yeah, well, he is wearing the hat in that one scene.
Yeah.
In that one scene. But yeah, I kind of dig it. I mean, classic Freddy is, always going to be my preferred Freddy. But, it's the 90s now, and he's
got to glow up.
Yeah, exactly. He technically, this isn't Freddy. This is this ancient demon that, takes the form of certain
fiction characters.
Exactly. And so he could probably make himself look like whatever he wants to. And so it's like he gave Freddy an upgrade. And, I think, he has the more demonic eyes and he's just bigger.
A Jason X treatment, but not too much.
Exactly. Yeah. I dig the trench coat. And you know what? I never would have thought Freddy could pull off leather pants, but I think he does.
Yeah. It's strange. His claws are like, they're built into his fingers now. Or I guess they were always.
Well, yeah, these are like, the glove is like made out of bones.
Yeah.
And if you look at the old Nightmare on Elm Street posters, like the poster art, like the old paintings on like the VHS covers and stuff, that's what it looked like. So it seems like whoever designed this claw, that's where they went for their inspiration, which I always love, that old poster art.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fan service in this movie too, Joe. Like that go back to like obviously the first Nightmare on Elm Street. The one line where I'm like, oh, this is for the fans of Nightmare on Elm Street is when she's in the hospital and she's like going to see her son, and the nurse goes, "You need a pass to come in here." And she's like, "Screw your pass," the same way she says it. And it's just like there's a lot of that fan service that I think if you're a fan of the movies, you're in the theater, you're gonna giggle. And like it's a fun ride for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure I was cheering it in several moments, 12-year-old me in the theater, but I really dug this movie. I could understand if it wasn't exactly what some Freddy fans wanted at the time or even now, but I just thought it was so risky and different and just reverent. Even 9-year-old me seeing Freddy's Dead felt like the tone of that movie kind of jumped the shark, Freddy playing, Nintendo.
Yeah.
I mean, I just appreciated the tone of this movie, and just there's obviously just more craft than some of the later sequels. And I actually really liked how they, Nancy, it isn't Nancy, it's the actress playing Nancy, but she's back and John Saxon is back, and not in a way that felt like other sequels, like Jamie Lee Curtis in the Halloween movies, where they just wipe away the continuity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess they sort of are with this movie, but they're not. The other movies exist, they're movies, and this takes place outside of that. So I feel like it's still honoring the series, but doing something completely different.
Well, it's refreshing too not to see, because such a trend today of reboots is like the characters are like washed up alcoholics living in a trailer park, like their lives are in shambles, and then whatever. But no, John Saxon's doing fine. Heather Langenkamp's doing great. I mean, all the characters that we know from the original one that we see are doing great. So it's not like a sad, all of our heroes are miserable.
Don't you wish Freddie and Robert Englund met in this movie? I feel like that's a big, kind of missed opportunity.
Oh shit, that would have been awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just kind of what I mean when I just wish this movie went a little bit deeper, a little bit crazier. But this was still a pretty low budget movie, and I'm sure it was ambitious for the time and money they were making with. So
I could see Freddy meeting Robert and be like, "Time to die, you handsome bitch," and like that's how it ends. I don't know.
I was actually thumbing through this book I have. It's called Screams and Nightmares. It's a book about Wes Craven movies. And I actually wish I looked through this before our Scream podcast, because it had a lot of interesting little nuggets that I had never heard before. And one of Wes's inspirations for this movie was a dream he had. And he dreamt he was at New Line Cinema at like a cocktail party with the old Nightmare cast and crew. And Robert Englund was there, and he was in Freddy makeup. And he was doing his silly Freddy thing, but his shadow was like evil Freddy. It was like his shadow was the Freddy that Wes always imagined Freddy would be, not what Freddy became. So I just thought that was a really kind of creepy image when I read that. Like people at a party and Robert Englund's being goofy, but his shadow is evil Freddy kind of lurking in the back. I almost wish that was a scene in this movie.
Yeah, that's really cool. And they also show the shadow that kind of looks like Nosferatu a little bit when he's like, the shadows on the wall towards the end of the film. Do you remember that scene?
Totally. And if I'm trying to think back, I did, Eric, have this movie on Laserdisc.
I'm sorry I didn't ask initially. I was going to.
And I remember listening to the commentary. Wes Craven did a audio commentary, and I'm almost positive that's how I knew about the doctor, how he based it on someone from the MPAA. But I'm almost positive he did say that's a direct reference to Nosferatu.
Okay, I mean, it looks exactly like it, but the shadow idea is such a good idea. And it's really cool because, like, the idea that Wes Craven made the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's kind of like his Hollywood, what he made of it, and then it's like, well, that's based on something that's even more dark and sinister, and that's what I want to show in this film. So I like that. There is one little bit of trivia that you might care about, Joe, but I think Eric's really going to like.
Okay, hit me.
This film was dedicated to a production designer, and there was one other.
Was that the like in memoriam at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
So the man's name was Greg Fonseca, and he was a production designer. So they said, in memory of. The other film that has him in memory of came out 1 year later, and it's one of your favorites, Eric.
Lion King? No, Lion King in 94.
Yeah, so 95, and it's a PG-13 comedy that you love. We both love.
Dumb and Dumber?
Nope, that's 94 too. I'll give you a hint. Schnikes.
Tommy Boy?
Yeah, so isn't that? I thought that was a really cool little connection. Like both of them gave their in memory of was this movie and Tommy Boy to the same guy.
Great movies to be involved with for sure. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyways,
that's a little trivia, little sprinkle. I like it.
So, how does this fit into your hierarchy, Joe, of the Nightmare on Elm Street series?
Like I said at the beginning of the show, I feel like this is part of that great Freddy trilogy, 1, 3, 7. That's probably my order as well. The first one is always going to be number 1 for me, and part 3 is just so much fun. And, and this one is just so imaginative and so different. So yeah, that's my order. This one's in my top 3, 1, 3, 7. Yeah,
I think I'm pretty similar to that. Eric, what about you?
I think I'd say top 4 for me. Like 1, 3 is Dream Warriors. I like Freddy's Dead, as stupid as it is with the, it's goofy, but this is definitely like top 3, top 4 for sure. Also 2's like, it's weird in its own way. It's good. It's a good sequel.
I know we're going to do 2 eventually, because we have a kind of funny story to go along with that one, but this is going to sound terrible, but I love Freddy vs. Jason so much I kind of sometimes think this and Freddy vs. Jason. I'm like, I don't know which one I like more. I really don't. This is obviously a better movie, but I just love Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on our Jason Lives episode. You'll get no judgment from me. I mean, I think that's a really good time.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap it up here, but we did talk, Joe, during our Jason Lives episode about like horror becoming a little bit meta, and that even everybody always says Scream, and then people are like, what about New Nightmare? And then there's Jason Lives, which is even kind of back further about things becoming a little bit more self-referential. But this film, I did not realize that Wes Craven exclusively wrote this. I thought he had a writing partner. So that was kind of cool that he kind of did this precursor thing, and then Kevin Williamson came to him with a script, and he's like, oh my God, I love this meta thing. Let's move forward with this. I had no idea this was all him.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Like I said, I feel like this movie feels so personal and just kind of Wes's, meditation on his career and what it's like to be associated with horror movies. And it's almost like, the characters in this movie are haunted by Freddy. And in a lot of ways, Wes was kind of haunted by Freddy and the horror genre. Funny quote from Wes Craven, I remember from an interview, he talked about seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time. And he thought to himself, my God, this movie must have been made by lunatics. And later he would find out people thought the same thing about him.
Right. Yeah. Joe and I, we're going to start doing our little separate wheel in the next few weeks. And I'm sure we'll get deeper into the directors and everything like that. But Wes Craven, dude, what an interesting guy. He was raised in like an extremely religious household. I don't think he was allowed to watch movies or TV or anything. And then he like escaped, right?
Yeah, he didn't see any movies outside of like children's movies until he was in college, I think.
Oh my God, that's so crazy that guy then makes Last House on the Left and or Nightmare on Elm Street and Hills Have Eyes. Like, oh, Eric, last question for you. Now that you've seen this and you've seen Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back about 100 times, what do you think is Wes Craven's best performance as an actor?
Probably this one. Over. What did he do in Jay and Silent Bob? Oh yeah, there's that gunfire scene, right? Was that him?
Yeah, it's like the monkey. They're doing like the scream, and it's like, God damn it, Wes, a monkey. And he's like, people love monkeys.
Orangutan.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, I do. I have one final thought. This movie is like getting the band back together one time, but also it's like this franchise has run its course. And then obviously we're gonna get the Freddy vs. Jason at some point. But I just like that idea where it's like, hey, let's just get everyone back together. We'll make this like kind of not swan song, but you know what I mean? End of the Freddy run. And it's kind of a cool way to do it.
Now, do you guys think they could make a sequel to this? What if we find out Wes was actually found with claw marks on his chest when he died in 2015? Huh?
It's a terrible idea.
All right, fuck.
Okay, I like it. It's different.
It's funny. I always thought if they ever did make a Scream 5, that it would be like this. It would be like Nev Campbell being stalked by a real life ghost face in Hollywood.
And Courtney Cox and like people running up there and be like, I love Friends. It's like,
exactly.
I'm doing a Scream. This is a Scream convention. Like, what are you talking about Friends about? Like,
and like, I mean, keep it in the Wes Craven tradition. And how many times could Sidney Prescott be, encountering these serial killers? But, that's fine. Scream 5, we did a podcast on that and I liked it a lot. So
yeah. And we'll do Scream 6 when it comes out. I can't wait to see what they call that one. Just Screams or something.
Screams with a 6. Oh my God.
That's probably what it'll be. Wait, what about Rex? We didn't even mention Rex.
Oh, poor Rex. You think he's done? I think they could sew him up one more time.
They can figure it out.
That's something, if this movie had a bigger budget and maybe some better special effects, we could have gotten like some kind of dream sequence where Rex and Freddy went at it.
I thought that's how he was going to go. Like this dinosaur just comes in and just like Jurassic Park's on the toilet like Freddy. I thought that's like, oh, Rex saves the day. The kid wasn't lying.
Oh my God. Also, I love how Freddy is afraid of fire and dies in fire, but then like his entire castle is surrounded by fire. You're like, okay.
Isn't it his like creation? Can't he make it whatever? I don't know. Like poor design by Freddy.
I'll say I feel like the ending is a little bit weak, like especially his demise. Like it just kind of happens really quickly. His eyes just kind of bug at the camera. Like if you go back to like Nightmare 4, he has a really great like slow special effects filled demise. I wish we got something more like that in this movie, but
he looked like my pug when he was dying. Like my pug's eyes were like bulging out of their head. I was like, oh, it looks like Duke.
Oh. It's like, this is my pottery kiln, and he just like goes in there, and that's how he dies. That was it. Like,
yeah. Well, anyways, you guys got any last minute thoughts on New Nightmare?
That's so Craven. That's so Craven. Imagine this like she's reading the script and that's how it ends. That's so Craven.
I love that. Anything, Joe?
No, this is, an old favorite from childhood. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it works great in that Nightmare trilogy, and it's a cool companion piece to Scream. So it definitely gets a recommend from me.
It's one of Wes Craven's best, I think. I don't know. It's a great movie.
Mhm.
Well, what do you say? Spin the wheel, bitch.
Spin it, bitch. Pulling it up. 1 second. All right, spinning. American Werewolf in London.
Ooh, very nice. We have Joey Toledo coming back. He's going to cover
Hell
that
yeah.
one with us. Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had him on, so that'll be fun. Joe, as always, God, it's good to have you on.
This was a fun one, guys. Can't wait to be back.
Oh, yeah, and again, we're going to get our separate wheels started very soon. I know we keep saying that, but it is coming very, very soon. And that'll be awesome to do all of these, very focused films with these awesome directors that Joe has hand-chosen himself. So that'll be great. Everybody, thank you very much for listening in today to our episode on New Nightmare. If you haven't had a chance yet, on Friday we covered Rescue Rangers, the Chip and Dale movie on Disney+. And then we'll see you all next week with An American Werewolf in London.
Woo!